Today we're tackling all we know about Savior, Margarethe Brent, from all the events that tie up to her upbringing, her life, and finally her death and everything that comes afterwards, post the Enslar question in Edania. This will be a two-part video where part 1 will be now, of course, and part 2 will be after we get to play her, and of course experience the lore from her perspective, with of course her level 56 questline and Edania re-walkthroughs, so make sure you subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss it. We cannot begin Savior's story without talking about what has transpired in the past, so that her existence would be necessary. In the final years of the Orzecan Empire, men arose from the slums of the fallen and degraded now kingdom. From the bones of the dead lying on the streets, he created a crown, placed it upon his head, and asked for those who wished to follow to do so. That man would become Belmorn, the monarch of darkness and creator of the Hexic kingdom. Without going into too much detail over him and the kingdom itself, he ends up conquering most of the known regions, toppling nearly the entire world under his regime, which is a remnant of Orzeca. One might say that Hexic Kingdom is indeed Orzeca's rebirth. Belmorn wanted to be able to rule forever. For his regime was challenged by the world itself, he wanted to achieve immortality so that the monarch of darkness would be, of course, forevermore. In ancient Orzeca, a god of hope was born, who would be able to grant each and every wish. His name was Kazarka. Yes, that Kazarka. Belmorn summoned the god and wished for immortality, but in a cruel twist of fate, Kazarka didn't give him immortality of the body, but immortality of the soul. The Knights of Dawn would arrive afterwards, make themselves known to the world, and with the help of the free people, banished Kazarka back to the abyss, and Belmorn's mortal form was also no more. But that was at a great cost, because Belmorn left a mark of darkness onto the Knights of Dawn, eventually making them succumb to it. From there, the Shadow Knights were born. Although most of them would submit to it, some sought to overcome it through faith, creating the Fraternity of Light, which would become a part of the Elion Church, which now resides within the established Calpheon. A woman of the Trinan Knights by the name of Enslar held much prowess and won favor with the Church, which at the time was at its most zealous state. The best way to spread faith is through creating horrors and sending examples of this religion to save the masses and draw them to the church. Enslar would become what is widely known as a Valkyrie, as this is what she was looking like while she was fighting. A living Valkyrie, that's what the church named her. Sometime later, the world was hit by the Dark Plague of Calpheon, which ends up killing the majority of the population. This event is also known as the Black Spirit Invasion, caused indirectly by Caphras, the immortal alchemist's cadre followers. As the world slowly and steadily began to perish, Enslar began to wrestle with the idea of Elion and the creed of the church. Why would he, the Lord of Light, allow all to perish as such? Why isn't he a savior? Where is he? What happened with him? Enslar began to ponder upon these questions and wrestled with her faith on a profound and fundamental level. Her conclusion was simple. Elion is no longer with him, as he had fallen to corruption. Enslar, however, saw that remnants of him exist within the world. She wanted to find a vessel that could contain and destroy the dark energies caused by the plague. Remember, this is the Black Spirit. Enslar would want herself to be that vessel, as she knew that sacred power could indeed bind those energies. But that plan, if it were to fail, as if she fell under that influence, no person would be able to stop her. A girl from the Serendan orphanage was taken under Enslar's wing, which showed great promise. She was trained and put through a great and body-breaking trials, all tutored by Enslar herself. She was a quick learner and was able to wield sacred light. As she became of age and her ability was like none other, Enslar revealed to her the truth of her upbringing, for her to be the vessel of Elion's light, and if that would fail, she'd be fallen by the hand of Enslar herself. The ritual would end up failing, but it was not on the matter of Margarethe failing to contain that power, but rather an unknown force for some reason sealed her away during that, causing her to collapse. Enslar picked her up, hid her, and created a few hypotheses around why it had failed to protect her from the church's gaze, which were, of course, to be fair with you, not even fond with her to begin with. Enslar would then take the mantle of the first Valkyrie. She trained a great many deal of nobles' children and rose to power within Calpheon, and here is where the Valkyrie legend, as we know it, the Valkyrie lore, transpires. Enslar would be sent by the church on a self-destruct mission to seal Kazarka, summoned by the church itself, as a means to cull the Valkyries down for sacrifice. Enslar, Margarethe, and another Valkyrie by the name of Venslar, that Valkyrie players might know, would all be present that day, according to the cutscene. But that would end up actually not being true, as Enslar and the Valkyries did indeed went, but they went alone, while Margarethe was hidden away, being sealed off by that mysterious energy. That cutscene is more of a religious depiction or a piece to resemble the struggles of the regiments against the truth of the church, and it's kind of like an actual depiction of what didn't happen more than what actually did happen. Quite some time after, Margarethe would awaken and end up looking everywhere for Enslar after her disappearance post-stealing Kazarka. She would hear those stories. She would travel the world all the way up to Edania. Most of what I shared with you is already entirely based on the first accounts of Enslar and Margarethe inside Edania's quest chain for Rubeida Castle, so Enslar would relay her reasons for becoming a Demon Lord as simply Elion's way. If he chose to fall, then so should we fall with him. This is the tragedy of Enslar as a character, to wrestle with God thinking that you are obliged to be made sense of. Her sin is such. We all know how that ends. Enslar, in her hubris to remake herself, gets saved by Margarethe as she takes the blow which was made for her instead. The vessel of the darkness to be cleansed by the light. A poetic ending, as this was what they were always meant to do. Remember something very important. Margarethe was an Idana all along. With her death, she gets a new life. This is the deal with the Black Spirit. She gets sent back in time, without almost any memories, just small glimpses, and wakes up into the Serendia Shrine. Immediately, the harsh realization of that place hits her as she almost gets executed for simply existing, being labeled as a Kazarka cultist, which I find personally quite ironic considering her past life and Fraternity of Light affiliation. This is a very interesting remark. She would have her sacred light with her, the power of the Valkyries. Margarethe, in all but name, is there, being sent to the Bloody Monastery to train ruthlessly as she did with Enslar. It's where Margarethe would meet Lara, our beloved NPC in Heidel, where, they would kind of form a platonic love for one another and stick together through the horrors of that school, and honestly what was yet to come. The Bloody Monastery would turn out to be a setup by the Fraternity of Light themselves, looking for a vessel of Belmorn, the Monarch of Darkness which we spoke about earlier, and the catch is, to be that, only one can survive. You either start killing one another, or you get killed. As the children massacred one another for survival, the headmistress changed the rules. You are now to kill only one. Do that, and you make it out. Margarethe and Lara would be the survivors of that. But it was all, of course, a setup, as the rules were remade again. Greta was told to strike Lara, and with Lara's permission and much regret in her heart, she did so, but she couldn't bear it. Everything from the lashings, the deaths, the ruthless hell she was in, a mere child, although not fully one. With a screaming burst of agony, she called the sacred light to appear with such ferocity, losing her mind for slaying her only friend. Margarethe would be engulfed in fury. This is something very important here, but from what we hear, Kazarka's corruption starts to fester through her, but this is just the sounds of Kazarka. We don't really know, but it kind of reminds me personally of that. At least that's what I personally hear. This is a little bit subjective. Here's where things get interesting, as she gets called resurrected afterwards, and the explosion of sacred light was actually attributed to Enslar. This is important as this event is happening in the past from Edania's quest chain. This is extremely cryptic as well. What I believe this may be is the church from the past thinking that Enslar's first Valkyrie, which is, of course, Margarethe, was hidden away, and they found her. At this point, all theories may be viable, honestly, and at the end we see Elezra, soon to be known as Sylvia, come through doing what we all know that she'll do, set us on the path. Margarethe takes the vow of Elion in the year 286, the present year. Both saviors, past and present, exist simultaneously through the Black Spirit's deal. This can be either of them taking the vow or retaking it. Plenty of theories around that, and to be fair with you, we just need to wait for Savior's release and her final bit of lore.